Hello everyone, and welcome to Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting series on what if Naruto become a god of gods with destruction power. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. So, this universe has universes within it. Naruto touched the orb. Amazing and interesting at the same time, he said with a small smile on his face. And why wouldn't he smile? It honestly was quite amazing. Now, his wife had told him that there would be different things that he could find and see when he would be exploring the universes, so this wasn't that shocking to him. Naruto grabbed the orb and looked at it one more time before putting it back on the stand. Universe Z18. It really wasn't the universe's name, but due to the universes that the universe has, then he will name it that for the meanwhile. Let's go. He created a black portal before jumping into it, Nawaki and Shisui following behind. Universe Z18. All three brothers entered the universe and looked around. The universes have minor life forms, Ni-sama, Shisui said, looking at each of the universe orbs before them. Naruto nodded and turned to look at Nawaki, who was looking towards a certain direction. The Senju sensed great power coming from that direction. There seems to be something from there, Nawaki said, pointing to where the power was coming from. The Uzumaki looked at where he was pointing to and nodded. Shisui put his hand on Nawaki's shoulder and asterisk flick. All three disappeared from where they just were, which was nowhere. Flick. They appeared in a place that had golden clouds beneath them and one huge jellyfish that was floating in the air. Very interesting. He saw the little palace that was on top of the jellyfish and raised an eyebrow. Why didn't he ever think of putting a house on top of an animal? They flew over to where the palace was, and as they went closer they saw more and more on what was on top of the jellyfish besides the floating palace in the shape of the kanji. Quan. That means, all around the palace there were 18 floating rocks that each had a universe above them. The three brothers flew towards the palace and opened the doors before entering. They looked at the inside and raised an eyebrow at the darkness. All flew inside more and they each vanished in a second before reappearing in a room, brightened up via the floor. Naruto's eyes dilated to adjust to the light, so did the two brothers before him, and immediately Naruto saw four figures. Two tall and two small, though one was even smaller. And the amazing part was that the smaller figure was the powerful one out of the four. He could sense it. The two tall figures shared the same appearance. They were tall and cyan-skinned individuals that wear large high-collared purple jackets with golden lining, buttons and shoulders that covered their face. Underneath, they appeared to wear a sectioned gray full bodysuit, with gold and purple tipped boots. They had their arms folded behind their backs, leaving their hands not visible. They also wore a long pointy-tipped bronze hat, that ends in a silver ball at the top. They also seemed to have very angry and menacing-looking eyes. The second to first small figure looked like a short man with pale blue skin, purple eyes, and slicked back white hair. He had a blue halo on the back of his head and wore a dark green outfit with an orange triangle on his shirt. On his belt he had the kanji symbol for great. And finally, the smallest figure was very short and small. He had a rather large oval-shaped head. He had sky blue skin, except for two sections from his ears to the middle of each eye on both sides of his head, which are purple. He had small round eyes, and small rounded gray ears. His attire is of a magenta and yellow-lined coat, with yellow pants and magenta shoes. He wore a black and white shirt underneath, with the kanji for all, Quan, on the front. He also had a blank expression on his face. All of them looked directly at the three brothers. Nawaki sensed a tiny movement in the two tall figures and smirked a bit. "Who are you?" the short man questioned the three brothers. Shisui turned his head sideways and could see that the curiosity in the small one's eyes despite not showing it. Naruto disappeared and reappeared in front of the man, who was shocked that someone could be that fast. The tall two tensed at the sudden movement. The two brothers appeared behind Naruto a second later, making the tall figures tense even more. Naruto's eyes changed for a split second before he spoke. "You speak for the kid over there, so I assume I will be getting answers from you." The man nodded slightly and looked towards the two figures. They got the message and one immediately went for Naruto as the other stayed by the little one's side. The man smirked but became shocked when Naruto grabbed the hand of the figure and tossed him to Shisui, all while not even losing eye contact with the man. Shisui smirked, and next thing everybody knew the figure's eyes closed and crashed down below Shisui's feet. If I were you, great priest, I would recommend telling them to not do that again for all your sakes, the Uzumaki said, giving the great priest a small smile, making the blue-skinned man nod slowly. Will do? The great priest said to the redhead. Shisui cancelled the genjutsu he put on the figure. The attendant quickly stood up and glared at Shisui before returning to his post. Now, I have seen this universe from afar and could say that it interests me. The short man looked at him with a raised eyebrow. A universe that has 18 universes within it. Now that is something very amazing, he said, making the white-haired man's eyes widen a bit in shock. Nawaki stepped forward. Add to it the power that this universe has, it was honestly quite amazing. Shisui nodded. Quite a unique power source. Nawaki glared at Shisui for repeating the same thing that he had just said, with the latter returning the action. Naruto nodded, ignoring his brothers who looked ready to kill each other. We came here because we want to see more of these universes. In this universe, Naruto smiled to the man. The great priest looked towards his master and then back at Naruto. The small figure had said nothing throughout this whole time. He was interested. Very well. The great priest gave the redhead a small motion to his master, as telling him to proceed in going to his master. The three brothers turned to look at the small figure. Hello, he said towards them with a straight face. The three were a bit shocked, his voice childlike. Naruto stepped forward and crouched down to look at him better. You are the king of this universe, Zeno? Naruto asked the small god, who nodded at his question. I see. Well, it's nice to meet you, Zeno-chan, the Uzumaki said, giving the god a smile, not caring about the guards who seemed to keep on tensing every 10 seconds, not that he blamed them. Zeno looked at him for 5 seconds before smiling at the redhead. Nice to meet you too. Naruto chuckled. Now, before we talk more on who we are, since you would also like to know, right? All four nodded. We would just like to know more about what you seem to know. Zeno nodded with a smile on his face. He turned to his angel and attendant. The great priest turned to look at Naruto, who was now looking at him. I assume you would like to know about us too, am I right? The priest asked towards Naruto. The redhead scratched his chin for a second before nodding to the angel. It wasn't that he didn't know who they were, since he had just his telepathic powers to see, but all he wanted to know at that time was their names and who commanded who. The grand priest gave the brothers a small smile before speaking. I am the grand priest, the attendant and angel of Zeno-sama. He pointed to the two tall figures. Those two are Zeno-sama's attendants. Their duty is protecting Zeno-sama from anyone who would bring him harm. Naruto could sense the tiny amount of pride within them when the priest said that. And finally we have Zeno-sama, the Omni-King of all. The small god did nothing but kept that smile on his face. Now, currently there are 18 universes that all have life within them each. Shisui brought out 18 orbs in front of him. Each universe cannot interact with the other without us allowing it. They also do not know of each other, which would be obvious. Naruto ignored the last part. All 18 universes are monitored by Zeno-sama, and I to make sure nothing out of the ordinary happens. Though it could be boring, which nothing does. Pause. There's also the dragon god, Salama. That intrigued the redhead, and the super Dragon Balls in which he had created that all reside within universes 6 and 7 inches. Naruto nodded at that, making a note to see more about that. And that is all that there is to it on what we know, the grand priest said to the brothers. All three nodded and looked at each other before speaking to the four in front of them. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, he pointed to his two brothers. Those are my brothers, Nawaki Senju and Shisui Uchiha. The two nodded. We are from a universe in which is far different than this one. The grand priest raised an eyebrow as Zeno tilted his head sideways. Within our universe we use chakra, in which would be the same as your energy, only more different, that you use, he said. Within my universe I am the god, more commonly known as the Jubi. The priest became wide-eyed at him, telling them he was a god. The same could be said for my brothers also being gods. All except Zeno tensed a bit. Now the reason we had come here is because when my wife had created everything she did not know what exactly she would create out there. He pointed to everything around them. This universe being one of the things she created. They tensed a bit more, and while she would have done it herself to see what she had created. I told her I would do it. The great priest was about to ask him if he worked for her and stopped before he did. Naruto did say he was the god, meaning he was above her. Now, was it part curiosity? Yes, but it was also due to me being bored. Now the priest would have sweat dropped but didn't. I want to see what these universes that my wife had created had to offer, the redhead said. The great priest nodded slowly. He looked towards Zeno and could see the interest in the three brothers along with a bit of happiness at them being gods like him. Sugoi. The king of all said to the redhead, he was cool in the little god's opinion. Naruto smiled at the small god. He turned his sideways to look at Nawaki and gave the brown head a nod. The Senju didn't do anything for a couple of seconds before giving his older brother a nod. He found where the dragon god was located. Naruto then looked at Shisui and saw the Uchiha also nod. He had found out a bit more on the energy that was all around them. The great priest saw all the movements and raised an eyebrow to them but didn't say anything. He didn't want to speak when he wasn't supposed to, unlike when he did before. The brothers had the power to destroy anything they wanted to, and that meant they also could power to create anything they wanted. So, if they wanted to then they could destroy his whole existence and bring someone else to life to take his position. Trust me, priest, if I wanted to then I would have destroyed you the moment you talked to me, Naruto said, snapping the man out of his thoughts. The angel gave the god a smile before nodding. Anyways, as I said, this world quite honestly interests me a lot. He looked at Zeno and the priest, and I do have more things to ask but I'll just tell you one for now since I've got exploring to do within those 18 universes, like the powers and dragon within. He pointed to the two. You both monitor all universes but, why monitor within two when you could just have others do it for you while also maintaining balance? He asked as the great priest's sweat dropped. Why the hell didn't he ever think about that? Fuck. All three brothers turned to look at the little god and flew to him. It was nice meeting you, Zeno-kun. The small god's smile lessened a bit. Don't worry, little man, I'll come to visit when I'm done exploring, Naruto said, sticking out his pinky finger. Promise. The king of all smiled again and did the same gesture as Naruto. Okay. Ruto, Zeno said to Naruto and completing the pinky promise. Nawaki stepped up and gave the small god a fist pump, while Shisui gave the god a friendly salute. They turned to the priest and nodded to him, something the angel quickly returned. The attendants were next and the brothers chuckled when the bodyguards bowed to them, though they did it by force, to which the three gods just smiled to them. Naruto grabbed the three brothers by their shoulders before disappearing from the king of all's palace. They had a certain dragon god to visit and some dragon balls to know about. Pause. Quite the interesting universe. All three brothers looked at the four in front of them. Gods of destruction and supreme kais, Naruto said slowly while also nodding his head. They do sound quite nice in name. Add to it that they also are going to make your jobs less stressful. The priest and Zeno smiled at the praises. Shisui spoke up next. But who exactly will be these 12 gods of destruction? Since you said they will be chosen by hand? The Uchiha asked. The priest smiled and snapped his fingers. Flick. In a quick flash, 6 small children appeared right next to the great priest. 4 girls and 2 boys. All of them being quite unique to say the least. By unique meaning the hairstyles they had. For the girls, one had a single ponytail. The second girl had 2 ponytails. Third had braided hair going one side. And the 4 had slicked back hair. As for the boys, one had slicked back hair while the second had his hair sticking up to form a pointy tip and the tip bending back. The great priest pointed to the 6. These are my children, created with my very own blood and with my powers, he said to Naruto as the children all looked at him with curiosity. For your question, Shisui-sama, we hoped you would do choose the gods of destruction. The angel pointed to the 3 brothers who smirked at him. How long will we have to find them? Nawaki asked. The priest gave the Senju a smile. As long as you want, but if I were to be more time-wise I would say 1,000 years, he said to them. Naruto quirked an eyebrow. Why 1,000 years? He asked. 1,000 years due to my children still not having the knowledge and power to teach these gods destruction. There were only 6 children though, so it should leave enough time to search for these gods of destruction, the angel said as they nodded. They stood up and took their leave to find the new gods. Well, let's see who has the guts to be a god of destruction. They smirked. By Zeno-kun. With that they disappeared in a flick. The small king waved at them, bye-bye, outside the palace. All three appeared outside the palace and looked at the 12 universes that were now there. Now, which one should be first? The Uzumaki said. They slowly looked at each before stopping on Universe 5. Let's see who you have. Universe 5 inches, Naruto said as both he and his brothers went into the 5th universe. Within Universe 5, 30 years later, Nawaki grabbed the foot that was thrown at him before throwing foot's said owner to the side and into the rocky wall. Slow but nonetheless impressive for a mortal, the Senju said. The person, who had been thrown into the wall, detached himself from the wall and immediately fell to the floor with blood coming out from his mouth. Nawaki went to him before beginning to heal him. The person who was on the floor was a tan and somewhat wrinkly humanoid with large purple eyes and an emaciated frame. He had a red mohawk and did not have a nose but had nostrils. He also had whiskers on his face and large purple lips. Eric. You might not like killing but still do it if it's your duty. He smirked and looked towards his brothers who nodded to him. Nawaki turned to the mortals who had similar appearances to Eric and smirked at them. Congratulations, one of your people is to be a god of destruction, Nawaki said to them who just cheered. For them it was an honor. Did he want to know why? No, if they wanted to cheer for a future being would be killing millions, then let them cheer. Nawaki picked up Eric before putting a seal on his forehead. To maintain him alive, he turned to the people before nodding to them. Naruto and Shisui came behind him before putting their hands on the Senju's shoulders and disappearing from the universe. They found a god of destruction, so their job was done. Universe 12. 100 years later, Shisui looked down at the fish humanoid that was struggling to stay conscious. You'll do, since no other mortal seems to have the same power level as you, nor do they seem to be as strong as you, he said with a smirk on his face. Universe 3. 370 years later, Naruto nodded to the creature in respect. He knew when he was defeated. Very smart. You'll do, the Uzumaki said to the creature. Universe 2. 10 years later, me too, me too, me too, she said as she came. Universe 1. 70 years later, all three brothers looked at the small creature and tried to hold in their laughter. Very much tried. The guy was just so damn small, but they couldn't deny that he was the most powerful within Universe 1. You'll do IWNE, Universe 10, 15 years later. You say you're young but you honestly look old as fuck. Nawaki didn't hold back on commenting the pink humanoid elephant, whose eye twitched. Oh well, I don't really give a fuck if you're old or a baby, all that matter is that you're strong. The man elephant nodded before falling down unconscious from the seal they put on him. Universe 9, 25 years later, Naruto nodded to the man in front of him. Well, Scruffy, seems like you have the qualities to be it, he said. Said man quirked an eyebrow and was about to ask what exactly was it, but didn't get to as he quickly fell unconscious. It's always easy. Universe 8, 50 years later, Shisui sighed at the fox humanoid. You remind me of one of my brother's wives, though she was way more powerful than you. By a lot, he said, making the fox look down in shame. He was supposed to be powerful and yet he was beaten in a second. Shame. But you'll do, Universe 4, 100 years later. Nawaki put more pressure on the little mouse's neck. You are such an annoying and weak little thing, the Senju said to Quitela. Said mouse humanoid tried to get out of his captor's grip but failed. No matter how hard he tried, it was just not possible. But since you are the most powerful being within this universe, then you will have to do, even if you are a pest. Universe 11, 45 years later, Naruto smirked to the clown as to which said person did the same. Out of all the universes and all the candidates they fought, this one was the calmest one so far. You have the exact qualities, Belmont. Who else would I choose? Naruto said and nodded to the future god of destruction. Universe 7, 184 years later, all three brothers' sweat dropped at the teenage cat humanoids that were fighting for some pants that looked cool. Those idiots are just like you idiots, Naruto said to his two brothers who appeared next to a tree and began drawing circles on the ground with depressed auroras around them. The Uzumaki floated down and stopped right aside them before smacking them each on the head. Oi! Both said and looked to their hitter. Relax, you two, we came to shop, not to fight and destroy a town again. Naruto said as the cats glared at each other before nodding. The redhead sighed as he guided the two to the clerk. Idiots. -1 year later, Shisui snapped his fingers and in a quick flash all 12 candidates appeared in front of the 7, unconscious. He made a hand seal and all of them started to wake up. Good, now all of you are awake. The great priest gave them all a small smile. Beerus quirked an eyebrow at the small angel before speaking. Who the hell is the midget? He asked, to which all 3 brothers face palmed. Nawaki sighed. Beerus-chan ki twitch, he is the one who can also end your whole existence with a single flick besides Zeno-kun over there. The Senju said to the cat and pointing to king of all. Said cat, along with the rest, paled before bowing. I'm sorry for my disrespect, sir, Beerus said. The priest nodded and looked to Naruto and his brothers who were taking pictures of Beerus along with the rest. A second later the redhead stepped forward. Now some of you already know why exactly you are here. As to which some of you don't, he pointed to Beerus, Champa, Sidra, and Quitela. The reason why all of you are here is because you all are going to be gods of destruction for each of your universes, in which your main duty will be to keep the balance within your universe by destroying. Naruto smirked. And should you not do your duty, then well. Ask the other 6 destroyers of the other 6 universes that were destroyed by Zeno-kun over there. He pointed to Zeno, who smiled. All paled. Nawaki stepped up. Now do not think that just because you are a god of destruction that you don't have any rules to follow, along with the idea that you cannot be killed. The great priest snapped his fingers and the supreme kais appeared for each universe. They are the supreme kais for your universe, in which their duties are to create life to maintain balance. And they are also your life links, so if anything were to happen to them then you will also die. Some gave their life link the stink eye while others nodded in respect. The Senju held up a finger. As for the rules, he passed it on to Shisui. The Uchiha nodded and continued. 1. You cannot enter another universe without the destroyer's permission or the supreme kai's permission. 2. You are not allowed to travel through time or allow anyone to travel free. You are not to fight due to the powers you will have that can cause destruction. 4. Obey us, Zeno-kun, the great priest, and Zeno-kun's attendants, he said before passing it back to Naruto. The Uzumaki nodded to the priest and in a snap the angels all appeared. His 6 children and 6 other angels created via the priest's power, all grown up. These behind me are angels whom will be your teachers to control your new powers while also serving you as your attendants. Naruto motioned for Vados to come to him. Though I recommend not doing something that will get you killed by either them, the great priest, or me, since all of them will always be more powerful than yourselves. Add to it that 3 of the air also my wives, he said, putting his arm around Vados and giving her a peck on the lips, to which she gave him a smile. The angels attending you are also there to keep an eye on you. Should you ever cross or break the rules placed, then they will inform us immediately. The redhead looked at each of them. They nodded and bowed to their angels. They can be your friends if they want to be your friends, so choose your actions carefully. The brothers stepped back and allowed the great priest to talk. He looked at them and gave them a small smile. You were all chosen by Naruto-sama, Shisui-sama, and Nawaki-sama because you all have the qualities to be gods of destruction, so do not disappoint. He backed up and this time Zeno floated forward. The king stayed silent, making them nervous, and just looked at their clothes. I don't like your clothes. You should wear some new ones. He turned to his angel and gave him a little nod. The angel nodded and made a note to tell the angels. The little king went back to his throne and let the brothers and his angel do the rest. Naruto looked at the priest and motioned for him to give them their powers. The angel nodded to his master and put his hands forward. As I said before, do not disappoint us, gods and goddess of destruction, he said before enveloping them in a purple aurora. They tensed and thought it was going to hurt, the ascension, but didn't feel anything. After a few seconds the process stopped and they looked at each, surprised. They could feel the power within them. It was amazing. Naruto smiled at his wife Hellas before smirking at the rest. Congrats, gods and goddess of destruction. Nawaki and Shisui nodded at Naruto's change in clothing. The redhead had decided a long time ago that since he was in a new dimension that he should change his clothes to blend in. Problem though was that when he and his 2 brothers entered, they all had boring clothes. The great priest had a lot of clothing that were just meh. Zeno, due to him being kid-like, was meh too. and the attendants were no in clothing. But, when he had seen the clothing of the gods of destruction, then he got an idea in clothing. Though, way more different. Instead of colorful pants and those collars around their necks, he only had one color for the pants and no collar that had patterns on it. He also did not have those shoes that the gods had. Naruto had black baggy pants with black knee-length sandals. He wore golden bangles and golden rings on his arms. The only things he got from the gods, since he quite honestly liked the accessories. The pants aren't as baggy as how they are supposed to be, so that's good. Naruto took off his shirt and threw it to the side. He wanted to show as much as he could. I mean, the gods did it, so why couldn't he? He went forward to his brothers and asked them again the question that he had already asked before. "Are you sure you guys want to sit this one down?" the redhead asked, and they nodded. It was not that this dimension was not interesting, but rather they had many more dimensions to still go to, so sitting this one down was not going to impact them. "Yeah, Ni-sama, I mean we have many more dimension to see." Both the Uchiha and Senju stretched their muscles. "So we'll just let you explore. You seem to like it more than us, so we'll just stay here and sleep the millions of years away," Shisui said. Naruto sighed at the last comment. They loved to sleep, which he doesn't blame them for it, since they had grown up in eras where there were wars going on, or at least some sort of conflict, and add to it that since they had been resurrected that they both had to train harder to be as powerful as he was. So yeah, he could see why they wanted to sleep. "Just wake us up if there is something good going on," Nawaki said. Naruto nodded and started to float up. He had decided years ago that he was going to go to Beerus's universe, since the lazy cat was no doubt going to slack a bit on his duties. To which the god of gods did not care that he did. Yeah. Time skipped to age 722. Naruto looked down at planet Vegeta and chuckled. Saiyans truly were entertaining. The planet had been named that because they had won the Saiyan Tuffle War due to King Vegeta, so of course, they would name that planet Vegeta. "This Bardock person. He seems okay," Naruto said as a spaceship passed through him. The Uzumaki flew down to the planet and made himself invisible so they wouldn't notice, even hiding his ki. He was going to visit a certain woman who had just come back from a mission and was currently in the recovery room. She is quite different, to say the least. Naruto went forward and quickly put a genjutsu on the doctors to make them leave the room as he became visible. He pressed some buttons to take her out of the medical machine that was healing her and caught her when she fell forward. Oh, and did I forget to mention that she was naked and unconscious? Yeah. Naruto put her in a bridal position in his arms, and in a flash, he gave her a small cut on her finger and drew a small amount blood. He threw that blood on the floor, and with no hand seals needed, a person started to form from the blood. Not a clone, but rather more like your long-lost twin. That had just been born within an instant, the Uzumaki said, and used his telepathic powers to transfer the memories of the first to the now created woman, all while also levitating her and putting her back in the pod so that she wouldn't be confused. After a few seconds he was done. Naruto looked down and gave a smile to the woman. "Your long-lost twin, Jin," Naruto said. It was one of the powers he had learned within the dimension that he had already traveled to. The power to create another person of someone. It would have the same memories, once transferred, and the same physical traits, but not the same within. For example, the twin's blood had been altered a bit to actually make it so that it was a twin. And if they were to ever have children, then it would not be the original's children, it would be the twins. The Uzumaki closed his eyes and asterisk flick he and Jin disappeared from planet Vegeta. Huh? Bet you guys didn't see that pairing coming, now did you? -1 year later, Naruto put up one finger and stopped the punch that Jin had sent his way. "Stay still, Naru," said woman yelled at the Uzumaki, though there were quite a few differences from the woman that she definitely did not have a year ago. In which Naruto had taken her from planet Vegeta. One major difference being the standing golden blonde hair that she had, along with the black-haired wolf with 2 tails on her neck. Yeah, that's right. Jin had become Super Saiyan within the year. Well, not just the first stage, but rather the second stage too. It's just that she wanted to master the first level, so she didn't really use or go to the second stage. Once one is done, then she goes on to the second. Nah, he gave her a smirk. He wanted to push her buttons a bit more, just a bit. Solo Unpoco. Time skipped to age 728. Seems like me and you have a nephew, he said, to which she didn't say anything. Time skip to age 732. The kid really looks like his own father, that it isn't even funny. Naruto looked down at the orb in front of him. Jin didn't say anything but rather tried her hardest to maintain her laughter. Time skip to age 736. Seems like yet another nephew, who doesn't stop crying. The Uzumaki muttered the last part. Jin grinned at her new baby nephew. He really has a pair of lungs, doesn't he? She asked, to which he nodded. Time skip to age 739. Both Naruto and Jin didn't know what to do. Well, more her than him, since he didn't really give two fucks about what happened to planet Vegeta. It was her race, with partially his, since he had the Saiyan blood within him via blood from Jin, so she was to decide if she wanted to save her planet. No, she said after a couple of seconds, as the planet full of Saiyans was destroyed. The reason being Goku. Jin had seen her nephew escape from the planet before its destruction. As long as he was safe, then she was not going to save anybody. Also, she knew her firstborn nephew was also safe along with Vegeta, not the king but the prince of the Saiyans and former planet. Naruto shrugged and didn't say anything. Cause 1, they might have been his people, but they quite arrogant. 2, Bardock was alive due to his mischievous demon wife, Toa. Might there be a chance that Jin knew? Maybe. Oh well. He knew she only cared for the safety of her nephew since he was just 3 years old. Soon, Naruto said as he and Jin stood up. Time skip to age 749, August 15th. The kid seems to do fine on his own, Naruto said, looking down at the 12-year-old who was very, very small for a Saiyan. But, I promised Jin that I would watch out for him. Naruto ran his hand through his hair. The Uzumaki stood up and jumped off the cliff that he was sitting on and into the water down below, that his nephew was bathing himself in. Splash. What was that? Goku, who was 12 but yet didn't look like it, said as he turned to where the splash came from. Naruto came up from the ground a minute later and made it so he had inhaled some water when he was not supposed to. Cough cough. That cough was not the entrance I wanted to make, Naruto said, coughing the water out of his lungs. Goku looked at the stranger and turned his head sideways, looking at Naruto with curiosity. The redhead stopped coughing and looked at Goku. You look short for a 12-year-old, Naruto said as Goku gave the older teen a smile. How do you know I'm 12? The little kid gave Naruto a small innocent laugh. Naruto gave his nephew a small smile before going to him. Once he was a few feet away from him, a tail came out from the water behind Naruto. I'm your uncle. Goku. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next part.